Picture someone at a crowded gathering who says almost nothing. They don't argue, they don't chase, they don't perform. Then one day they simply step back. And strangely, the whole room reorganizes around their absence. People start asking where they went, why they went quiet, what they might be thinking. That empty space becomes louder than any argument. Now ask yourself an honest question. If you stopped reacting to every message, every jab, every emotional pull, who around you would suddenly panic? Carl Jung believed the answers to that question tell you far more about others than about yourself. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The people who control you rarely do it through force. They do it through your predictability. They know exactly which comment makes you defend yourself, which silence makes you apologize, which absence makes you come running back. Your reactions are the handles they grab, and every time you react on cue, you hand over a small piece of your energy. By nightfall, you feel drained and hollow, and you can't explain why. The reason is simple. You've been too available to people who never earned even a single minute of your silence. From childhood, most of us were rewarded for being helpful, quick to answer, quick to agree. We learned that our value lived in how useful we were to everyone else. But here's what nobody said out loud. Being endlessly available is not generosity. It's a quiet prison. When you're reachable at all hours for any reason, you stop being a person and start being a service. People press you like an emergency button when they need comfort, then set you back on the shelf. And the illusion keeping you trapped is this belief that if you show up for everyone, someone will finally show up for you. Jung described the persona, the polished mask we wear to be accepted and loved. That mask is exactly what keeps you overexposed. You reply instantly even while exhausted. You say everything's fine while quietly suffocating. You explain, justify, and defend yourself as though you owe the world a report. But the more you crowd the center of everyone else's stage, the more you vanish from your own. Constant availability is a subtle form of self-abandonment, a disguised hunt for approval. And the price you pay is your peace, your calm, your limited and precious energy spent as if it were endless. Notice the cruel arithmetic of attention. The more freely you give yourself, the less people value what they receive. What is always available becomes background noise. Nobody respects what they never had to earn, and nobody treasures what never disappears. The friend who only calls in crisis, the partner who needs rescuing, the acquaintance who praises you only while you're useful, they aren't connecting with you. They're connecting with the role you agreed to play. So pause and ask a sharper question. Who actually deserves your time and attention? And maybe the deeper question, who deserves your absence? Jung didn't see the mind as a machine that simply reacts. He saw it as an energy system where every thought, feeling, and action spends part of a limited supply. So the real question is whether you're choosing where that energy flows or letting the world spend it for you. Defending against criticism that never deserved a word, replying to provocation just to prove a point, chasing approval from people who don't value you, all of it drains your inner reserves. And remember his warning. What you resist tends to persist. The more you react, the tighter the knot becomes around you. Someone who lives emotionally exhausted isn't weak. They're simply pointed in the wrong direction. But exhaustion has a cost. When you're depleted, you become easy prey, and manipulative, needy, opportunistic people can sense it. They notice you react to everything and try to fix everyone, and they help themselves. A healthy psyche, Jung said, keeps energy inside the system. That means saying no without guilt, staying silent without feeling cowardly, and observing before acting. Well-guarded energy becomes presence. You walk into a room and command respect without a word. Poorly managed, that same energy leaves you invisible and fragile. Jung described projection, the way people cast onto others what they can't face in themselves. But there's a second half rarely mentioned. The more emotionally available you are, the more you become the blank canvas they paint on. They don't relate to the real you. They relate to a convenient idea of you. And the strongest manipulation isn't shouting, it's guilt, that quiet sense that you owe help, patience, understanding, even when it's destroying you. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They only need you to keep reacting the same way. Break the pattern and the projection begins to crumble. The world is loud, obsessed with the quick reply and the one argument. But there's a rare power almost nobody masters, the power of conscious silence. Not the silence of cowardice, but a lucid, deliberate quiet that is amplified presence rather than absence. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe, and you notice patterns you missed before. The manipulation loops, the emotional bait, the cycles of self-sabotage. Notice how some people panic when you simply don't respond. It isn't that they miss you, it's that your silence strips away their control of the story. While you argue, you're still in their game. Silent, you rewrite the rules. Silence isn't free. It will distance you from people who only valued the role you played. To those who only ever saw their own projection, you'll suddenly seem cold, distant, even arrogant. But that reaction comes from people who wanted your usefulness, never your depth. And here's a mark of maturity. The more you grow, the more selective you become with your words, because you understand each sentence is an investment of energy, and not everyone has earned access to your truth. Sometimes staying quiet isn't retreat at all. It's sovereignty, the language of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Understanding all of this means nothing if you still say yes when you mean no. Awareness without action is just a more sophisticated way to fool yourself. Real change starts with small, deliberate acts, not answering instantly, breathing before you react, leaving a conversation before it drags you into chaos, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, and the hardest part, refusing to justify any of it. You don't owe an explanation for your silence or your absence. That refusal is what dismantles the narrative where you're always the endlessly helpful, endlessly available one. Jung taught that becoming whole, what he called individuation, always passes through isolation. Not a depressive collapse, but a sacred retreat where you relearn to hear your own voice without the world's constant interference. In that space, you rebuild your identity from your own center, not from the gaze of others. Want a reliable thermometer for your growth? Watch who starts pulling away when you become more reserved. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of having changed the moment you begin protecting yourself. Those aren't signs you're wrong. They're proof you've started to free yourself. Being unavailable feels uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll wonder if you're being selfish or too harsh. You'll hear that you've changed. All of that is part of the deconstruction because you spent years conditioned to put yourself last. Your emotional absence exposes wounds that others never wanted to face and reveals how much they relied on your chaos to feel in control. That's when the rupture arrives, and with it comes loneliness and the strange feeling that you're losing something. But look closely. You aren't losing anything real. You're finally setting yourself free. When you stop being available to everyone, first comes the silence, an uneasy quiet that seems to scream inside you. But gradually it changes. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. Then comes solitude. Not the solitude of emptiness, but of full presence with yourself. Where there was confusion, clarity arrives. Where there was anxiety, peace. Where there was neediness, a new strength appears. The strength of being whole on your own. This is the moment you stop being a reactor and become a creator, no longer shaped by circumstances, but shaping your world from within. Understand what this really is. It's a rebirth. The start of a life where you no longer accept emotional crumbs, mind games, or emptiness dressed up as affection. From here, you welcome only what resonates with your peace and your truth. You'll lose some people, but you'll finally find yourself. You'll drift from certain places and reconnect with your own essence. You may be misunderstood, yet at last you'll be respected. Because when you're no longer available for just anything, you become rare, valuable, unforgettable. So the real question remains, are you willing to pay the price of simply being you?